I didn't look at him like, oh no, I'm going to outlive you. Like, I was just like, I am so happy you're here. And I'm so happy that you're teaching me all the things that you're teaching me. And I just wanted to learn and love him and embrace every day. I just feel like my real life started. I know I had an adult life. I had childhood and I had an adult life before my son was born, but I feel like life started once he was born, once I became a mom. And so I always say, like, I will never be the same person that I was before he was born. Yeah. After anymore, because he changed me in so many ways, and they were so many positive ways. So I'm super thankful.
I love that. I absolutely love it. Okay, so you became a mom. Tell me about becoming a mom.
So my husband and I got married in 2012. Okay. And I guess a year after, we were trying to decide if we wanted to have a baby yet or not. Like, I think he really wanted to wait another year. But then it was really weird because I took a pregnancy test, a digital pregnancy test, like 2 days before our first anniversary, and it showed pregnant. It said pregnant on the digital pregnancy test. And so I didn't tell him I was taking it. I just went into the bathroom. We were leaving for Vegas that day for our anniversary trip, and which isn't a problem because I don't drink, so I wasn't going to miss out on anything.
Sure, yeah.
So I came out of the bathroom and I said, "You're going to be so mad." And he said, "Why?" And I showed it to him, and he was like, "Oh my God, are you serious? You have to go to the doctor before we go to Vegas and just make sure." So I went to the doctor. He tested my blood and said, "No, you're not pregnant. Oh, no. Come back and see me in a month."
Okay.
So I went back.
You're like, okay. And
it was negative again. So I guess I got a false positive.
Okay.
So after that, we were like,
we want to
bummed. I think we want to go ahead and start trying to have a baby. So we did, and we got pregnant right away.
That's awesome.
And we were, of course, I told him, I found out he's a firefighter in Odessa, and so everything happens on a shift day. If you're a firefighter's wife, you know everything happens on a shift day. Well, I found out I was pregnant on a shift day. Yeah. So I went to the store and got balloons and, like, got it all ready for whenever he came home the next morning so that he could see, like, we're going to have a baby. And that was really cool. It was something that I will never forget.
The best moments.
You know, my dog knew before my husband.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys find out you're pregnant. At what point, you know, did you do blood testing? Did you find out the gender? Did you do all of those things?
So I did the genetic testing, but, you know, like, they didn't have, I don't think back then they had the, like, find out the gender through blood test. Maybe they did, but I don't know. So I did genetic testing. I did find out that it was a boy, like, pretty early. I think it was, like, 15 weeks-ish. Yeah. We did a gender reveal. It was super exciting. Everything was perfect with the pregnancy until, like, I don't know, I think I was past 30 weeks and I was being monitored, and the baby's heart rate kept dropping with contractions. And so they sent me to the hospital. They monitored me and sent me home. They were like, everything's fine.
Good.
It's fine.
Did you feel fine?
I felt fine. I was very swollen, though.
Okay.
Like, I was like, this baby's going to be huge because I'm very small, and I was swollen. Like, my coworkers were like, I hope you're, what is the stuff that you put on your stomach, the butter?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, the cocoa butter.
Cocoa butter. Uh-huh. They were like, I hope you're cocoa buttering your ankles because you're going to get stretch marks on your ankle.
I've had friends that went through that. Oh, bless your heart. Yeah, that's uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. So maxi skirts were in, thank goodness, back then, and that's what I wore all the time.
Awesome. Very nice.
And so I went in, of course, the 4th of July, we were getting off. I guess the 3rd was, the day before was,
Sure.
I don't know if it was a weekend. I can't even remember.
Sure.
But I had an appointment on the 3rd, and I went in, and they monitored me, and his heart rate dropped for like 2 minutes during a contraction. And they sent me to the hospital again. And it's funny because whenever I worked the whole day.
Yeah.
And I left work, and they said, all right, go have that baby. And I said, I wouldn't be that lucky. And then I got to the hospital, and they were like, all right, as soon as your husband gets here, because it was a shift day.
Yeah, of course
He was at work.
Yeah.
They said, as soon as he gets here, we're doing an emergency C-section, and we're going to get this baby out. And they did that, and as soon as he was out, he didn't cry, and he didn't move. And all I remember is looking, and he was, laying, and they were thumping the bottoms of his feet. Well, I had just taken a CPR class several weeks before, so I knew what that meant.
Yeah.
And I looked at my husband, and I was like, is he okay? Is he okay?
Yeah.
And he just moved his chair in front of me and said, he's okay.
Love him. God love him.
Yeah, so that was extremely scary, and he kept his cool and held himself together for me. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But I am super lightweight with any kind of drugs, and I don't know what they put me on that night.
Sure.
Of course, I had a C-section, so I was probably on some really strong stuff.
Yeah.
And I had him at like 7:41 p.m., so I don't remember anything else for the rest of that day. Yeah. I was very out of it.
Yeah.
He was taken to the NICU.
So they got him breathing.
They got him breathing, but they were like, they called him a floppy baby because he was extremely weak. He couldn't move at all.
Okay.
So they even called him that in the NICU in Fort Worth. But they ended up flying him out the next day to Fort Worth. And of course, I wasn't released from the hospital.
Sure.
So that sucked.
Yeah. How are you feeling? What's the conversation like?
My husband went with him.
Okay, good.
Because he's very he's very protective of me and our
and
children.
He's a firefighter, so he's used to these like high intensity situations. Thank God.
But it's different with your wife or your kids. It's completely different. Yeah. And so that was really hard. He just, I don't even know. Like he was a different person, just like me. After that day, he was a different person. He was just like, he's a fixer, and he couldn't fix this. So that was really hard for him because he was just like, I need to figure out what to do. And he's a researcher too. Yeah. He's like, okay, let me figure out what's going on. What could this be? Mm-hmm. And the people at medical center thought there was something wrong with his jaw. Like his jaw needed to be moved forward because he couldn't breathe well. Well, that had nothing to do with anything. Yeah. They were just like trying to figure out.
Yeah, we're all panicking.
Yeah.
Sure.
Turns out we didn't get a diagnosis until we were released from the NICU in September. He was born in July.
Okay.
And we just said, there's nothing that y'all are doing here that we can't do from home. So can we just take him home? Yeah. Even if it's on oxygen, it's okay.
So when did you get to hold him?
I didn't get to hold him until I think the 7th of July, and he was born on the 3rd.
Okay. So you went out. You recovered.
I got discharged early from the hospital because my doctor said, I can't keep you here if your baby isn't here.
Right.
But I really need for you to get up and walk. And so I stayed one night at my house, and then me and my mom flew to Fort Worth the next day. And that was a painful landing after having a C-section.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe that you weren't being wheeled around.
I was.
Okay.
I was. But oh my gosh, it was so bad.
Sure.
And so, we just asked them if we could just go home. After there was a lot that happened in the hospital, but we just wanted to go home with him. And so They sent him home on 2 liters of oxygen. And so he, had a nasal cannula in his nose. And he was on a feeding tube. He couldn't eat orally. He was too weak to eat orally. He had a swallow study done. So he had something called a G tube placed. And so he was formula fed his whole life. Because he could never gain the muscle strength to eat orally. We didn't know that then because we still didn't have a diagnosis. But he had a muscle biopsy, and that didn't tell us anything. So we had to do genetic testing between me, my husband, and him to figure out, like, is my husband a carrier? Am I a carrier? What exactly is this that we're dealing with? And he was diagnosed with X-linked myotubular myopathy. I'm a carrier, but not all moms are, which is so weird. Strangest thing. It's weird that you can go your whole life not knowing that you're a carrier of something so terrible and then have a baby, and then your whole life is totally flipped in all kinds of crazy ways.
I mean, you talk about it with such strength. Like, were you grieving for him? Were you grieving for yourself at any point?
People say ignorance is bliss.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that was me because, my husband being in the medical field, and everybody Googled it, and I didn't. I was just, like, so happy to be a mom.
Amen.
I didn't care.
That's so good. Yeah.
I didn't look at him like, oh no, I'm going to outlive you. Like, I was just like, I am so happy you're here. And I'm so happy that you're teaching me all the things that you're teaching me. And, like, I just wanted to learn and love him and embrace every day,
Yeah. I wish I was more like that. Like, that is so incredibly inspiring.
Thank you.
I absolutely love that. That is huge.
Thank you. Yeah, my husband, it was very hard on him because he wanted to fix it. Like, he just, this was his little boy who he looked so forward to teaching him how to throw a softball. My husband played baseball in college, so he looked forward to the day where he got to teach him and play with him and do all of these things. And he found out, like, so this diagnosis says these kids aren't supposed to live to see their second birthday.
Okay.
So that was devastating.
Sure.
Most of them have trachs and are on ventilators 24 hours a day. They don't necessarily get weaker as they get older, but at the same time they kind of do because their bodies grow and it's just hard. Raxton, who is my son, he was bedbound his whole life. He was extremely weak, so he couldn't even sit.
Sure.
And even if I held him in my rocking chair and just rocked with him or watched TV with him, he couldn't last very long because his muscles were so weak and it just hurt his body to sit for too long.
Sure.
So that was really hard. But every day was a celebration.
I love that.
Literally every birthday, we had a huge birthday party, and a lot of people showed up every year. And I was surprised because, every year I was just like, I'm sure people are going to start dwindling off and because it's 4th of July weekend. Nobody has time. Like, everybody's going and doing their own thing. No. I was shocked at the support and love that people and the time that people made to celebrate him because it was such a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what, like, when we talk about what can other people in our lives do to support us when we really need it, showing up.
Absolutely. That's
Showing
the
up
biggest. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's hard because being a special needs mom or a medical mom, you lose your friends. You just, because they don't know. I don't know if it's guilt, like from people thinking, I had kids so easily, and she wanted this so bad, and this is what she got. Like,
Right.
I don't know. Or, gosh, I can't relate to her at all in this situation. So I'm just going to go ahead and sink away and not call her.
Yeah, people don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So that's inspiring. At what point, do you reach a point where you're just scared you're going to lose him, right? So they gave you a time frame. Then what?
So, my husband hates me talking about this, but whenever he was 7 months old, he got really sick at home. So we were in the hospital from July to September.
Okay.
And then we were in the hospital from December to January because they wanted to put him on a ventilator at that time, just non-invasive, just a mask on his face. So they did that because he needed the breathing support and he needed to gain weight. He was working really hard to breathe, so he wasn't gaining weight.
Right.
Then we were in the hospital from February to May. In February, he had a brain bleed. And that was unexpected, and we didn't know what was going on. And, of course, when you go into a hospital and something is wrong with your baby, they interrogate you and they ask you what you did.
Especially a brain bleed.
Right. Did you drop him? Did you hit him? And he had a big bump on his forehead from where the blood went through a soft spot and was just collecting. Thank God that soft spot was still open because that saved his life.
Sure.
But he before all of this, we had been given the trach talk, is what we call it.
Yeah.
He needs a trach. He needs a trach. And we were just like so intimidated.
Yeah.
No. Like, me and my husband just cried and cried. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He'll be fine. He's doing great. Look at him. He's doing great. And of course, looking from the outside in, and now whenever I look back at videos before he was trached, I'm like, oh my gosh, that poor baby. He needed that support so bad.
Yeah.
But after that, the brain bleed happened, my husband came to me and he said, if he survives this, we have to trach him. And I said, I don't care what we have to do. I'll do anything.
Sure, yeah.
So that's what we did.
Good.
And that was the biggest blessing because we got to see his face without a mask covering the whole thing. And we got to see his smile. And he was such a happy baby and little boy. And so we did that. And then we went home and we stayed out of the hospital for a while. And he did great. We had home nurses. So there's something called MDCP, M as in mom, MDCP, that is very important for special needs moms to know about because it's Medicaid for kids who are disabled. It's the medically dependent children's program, MDCP.
Okay. We'll add it to the end of the episode. So
I don't think a lot of people know about it because people think they have to get their child on Medicaid based off of their income or whatever. And a lot of people are like, I can't do that. I make too much or whatever it is.
Sure.
This has nothing to do with your income. It has to do with the child and all of the equipment that they have and all of the needs that they have. Good. Yeah, so I don't even know how I found out about it, but I'm so thankful that I did when I did because that saved us on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it helped us to get all of the medical equipment that he needed and all of the supplies that he needed because he required so much.
You're doing this all at home.
Yes.
You're doing all of the research, becoming the experts in this genetic defect. Is that essentially what it is?
Yeah, it's a genetic disorder. So it is a rare form of muscular dystrophy is what it is.
Okay. So you'll get really good at that and doing all of the things that you can do to give him the normal.
As much normal as possible.
Yeah. Tell me about some of those things, those experiences. What did you guys do?
So once he had nursing at home, which we wouldn't leave the hospital, February through May until we had nursing help at home because it was really hard for me to do by myself while my husband was at work or whatever. And I needed that help. I didn't know what I was doing, you know?
Yeah, that's scary.
So he finally got to go into his own room, and I made his room into the very opposite of an ICU, because that's what it was that he had, is a portable ICU.
Yeah.
And so I just he couldn't play with toys like normal kids can.
Yeah.
And so I was like, gosh, he has all of these toys. What am I going to do? I don't want to just give them away. Like, I want him to be able to enjoy them. So I created a toy frame wall. So I put his toys, actually his nurse EJ did most of the work because he's really good. But he put the toys into a frame, and we created really cool backgrounds and really cool things so he could enjoy all of these toys. And we ended up doing them with his favorite characters. Like Woody was his very favorite. But he had a Woody frame and a Buzz frame and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and I mean, just so many Monsters Inc. and just so many different. And
I love that. I've gone back and watched your videos. I found you late in this process. So I went back in your journey and I watched videos, and that little boy was so present and so in love with you. It made my heart just gleam. Like I love all of those things that you were pouring into him and giving to him. Like you're the life source, and that's so.
Thank you.
That is so special and so cool. Okay, so going back to the question about, like, they give you this 2-year time frame, are you just living in fear?
We had heard about something, a clinical trial that was going to be starting for a cure for what he had. And we were just trying to figure out how to get him in this clinical trial. Like, what do we have to do? Who do we need to talk to? Where do we need to go? We'll do anything. We'll go anywhere. Just tell us. So my husband is like filling out all the forms, answering all the emails, sending all the emails, doing everything he can to figure out, because, of course, nobody's ever been treated for this, but if we have hope, then let's go with it, you know? And
every opportunity you can give him.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna give him.
So, so we got into the clinical trial in Florida at the University of Florida.
Okay.
So I don't even remember what year it was that we started going. Maybe 2017? No, 2016, because they started dosing in 2017. They required us to go every 3 months to Florida.
Awesome. Were
We
they
live
paying
in West
for
Texas.
This? Okay.
Yes.
But that's still, I mean,
It was hard to move him from his bed to another room.
Sure. Yeah.
It was a process because you have to take everything that he requires.
Yeah.
He required oxygen 24 hours a day. He required his ventilator 24 hours a day. He had to have his feeding pump most of the time 24 hours a day. Yeah. There was so much. Like, there's so many things I could name that people wouldn't even have any idea what that is.
Yeah.
He couldn't cough. He had something called a cough assist. Like, his cough wasn't strong enough. So he had to have a cough assist machine. It looks just like his ventilator. But he had to have all of these things. Yeah. And so my husband bought a motorhome. And that was how we transported him anywhere.
Every 3 months to Florida.
Every 3 months to Florida and back. So we would go. It would take us 3 days to get there. We'd be in clinic for 2 days or so. And then we'd take 3 days to get home.
Wow.
So it was crazy.
That is That's a lot.
Yeah, and it was hard because of all of the testing that they were doing on him was really hard for him. Everything was hard for him.
Sure.
So that really sucked to, like, it sucks to think about now especially, but back then it was just like, we're doing what we have to do, you know? But the clinical trial, once they started dosing kids in 2017, things were going really good. But then I think two of the boys, because only boys have this, since it's X-linked.
Sure.
Two of the boys experienced something called myocarditis. And so they had to put the clinical trial on hold completely to figure out, like, what is causing this in these two different boys? What do we need to do to protect them? Whatever. And so we were patiently waiting and anxiously waiting, and we were finally called in 2019, and we were told, okay, we're sending someone out to your house to go draw his labs. He has to do this, like his liver numbers have to look like this, because these boys, a lot of them have liver issues, which Raxton did.
So how long had you guys been doing this? Because that's 2 years, right? From you started it in
2016.
Okay. And this is 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
just
doing it.
Yeah, we've just collected data on him, like, over and over and over. They've just been they know Raxton like I don't even know Raxton. Like, they know him on so many levels.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like it's working? It's helping?
They're not doing anything but testing him.
Oh, okay. So this is just, he's a miracle. Yeah. He's already, love it.
Yeah.
Yay.
And so this is where the story gets kind of hard, because in 2019 they called us. We left on Thanksgiving Day, 2019, to Maryland, because the Florida site was shut down for the study. They said they didn't want to do this anymore.
Okay.
We didn't really know or understand exactly why, but we were just like, okay, if we need to switch sites, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we went to Maryland. And we lived on the NIH, National Institute of Health campus, for 5 months.
Oh my gosh.
There's no way to prepare your mind for that. We didn't know. We thought it was going to be just like maybe a month.
Sure.
But we got there, and they were very thorough, and they ran all kinds of tests on him, and they wanted to make sure that he was okay for this one-time injection. Once in a lifetime. You never have to do it again. It's an injection that is one time, but it's like an IV injection. So it's like a big syringe, and it goes over 2 hours or something like that.
Sure. And this has worked in another case.
So many boys.
Hey.
So many boys.
Okay, good.
Like, I, of course, was like, me and another MTM mom were trying to, like, figure out what boys have been dosed.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can figure out, let's do some digging.
Yeah.
And so, like, we knew the first boy that was dosed, even though we never talked to the mom. We were just, like, trying to figure out who they are so we can kind of keep up with them, because both of us are like, we need to have this for our boys.
Yes. And does it work? And how long does it work? And
right. And how are they doing?
I want to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we followed these boys. And of course, at times it got really hard, because, like, the first boy that was dosed, he was never trached. He wasn't as severe as our boys.
Yeah.
And he was doing good. Well, then there was another kid who was dosed. He was trached. He was dosed young. I don't even know if he was a year old whenever he was dosed. And his parents, a lot of the parents, I don't mean this in a rude way, but had enough respect to not share their son's progress, because it's hurtful for people like us who want this so bad.
Yeah.
And this kid's parents they were posting pictures, videos. He started walking. He got his trach taken out. He got his G-tube taken out. He was eating orally. It was a huge deal, but it was like, this kid wasn't even conceived when we got put in this study. What?
Yeah.
It was very hurtful.
Yeah. But inspiring?
At the same time, very, very,
Like,
very
there's a little
inspiring. Yeah, it was like, wow, that's amazing. But they're rubbing that in my face. That's what it felt like. So it was a little hurtful, but I would never tell them that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you've been fighting. I mean, we're going every 3 months to Florida. Now we're here. We've been here for months. Like,
right.
When does my baby get his miracle?
Right.
Of course, I get it.
Right. So we got there and they found a lesion on Raxton's spleen and they had to figure that out. So that was a process and that pushed the dosing date back. He was supposed to be dosed December 18th. I remember dates. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so then it was pushed back to sometime in January maybe. And then he was finally dosed, I think January 20th. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And that was such an exciting day. It was such a beautiful day, and it's crazy because, this is 2020. This is like beginning of the pandemic. My husband came in. He flew in for this, and he was sick as a dog.
Oh, no.
And I told him, you're going to have to stay in the motorhome somewhere because you can't stay. We were staying at, it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald house.
Sure.
On the NIH campus. I just told him, you can't stay here because I don't have time to be sick. And of course,
do you know how long we've been waiting on this?
Right. And it's funny because, everybody during the pandemic was like, when Raxton was still alive, they were like, how is this being in quarantine? And I'm like, no different from the way we've been living every day of his life. We don't go anywhere. We don't do anything. He's never been to a restaurant with us, never been to a grocery store. Like, we keep him in because we don't want him to get sick, and because of this clinical trial.
Sure.
And so we, he was, I'm pretty sure he had COVID, but it was before COVID was a thing. Yeah. Neither one of us got sick. We all stayed well. He got better, whatever. Raxton was dosed. He finally got this miracle drug. We were so excited. A month to the day later, I noticed his eyes were yellow, which is not a good thing.
Sure, yeah.
And he already had a bad liver before this medicine, but of course I didn't know the severity. I just, he's been on medicine for his liver his whole life. Everything will be fine, Yeah. And then he got yellow. His skin got yellow. And so we had to go to the clinic every single day, a bunch of lab draws.
Y'all are still in Maryland.
Still in Maryland.
Okay.
Bunch of ICU stays. And it's an adult ICU at the NIH. It was back then. I'm not sure if anything has changed since. But I was caring for him most of the time whenever we were inpatient because it wasn't a children's hospital. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I had to reposition him because he couldn't turn himself. Yeah. I never wanted him to have bed sores, so I did that his whole life. Yeah. Had to change his diapers, had to make sure his feeds were going, had to give him his meds, had to do his breathing treatments, all the things.
Yeah. How old was he at this time?
5.
5.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, so that's amazing because he was like way past what he was supposed to ever be. Yeah. And he was so happy. Even on the days whenever he probably felt terrible, he smiled every single day.
I hope you attribute that to yourself. Like, I hope that privately you give yourself all of...
I kind of do.
Good.
Yeah.
You deserve that.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely... I wanted to always be as positive to him as I could be because life was already hard for him, and I didn't want him to ever think that like anything was ever wrong. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to lie to him.
Sure.
But I didn't want to be like, oh, it's terrible. This is terrible. You know, I never wanted to give him that. So he was always very happy. But he unfortunately got very sick from that medicine.
Okay.
And he went into liver failure very quickly, and then he went into kidney failure, and then he went into multi-organ failure. And we were eventually transferred to a children's hospital in Washington, D.C., which wasn't too far from the NIH, and that's where he lost his life because he had gone through so much.
Yeah. His little body.
Yeah. But he was so amazing. He was so, so amazing. And I'm so thankful that God put him in our life because I see life in a completely different way than I did before.
Yeah.
I know I've probably been negative in talking to people or whatever in the past. Of course, I'm trying to grow as a person every single day.
Shout out, yeah.
Trying to be better. But I'm just so thankful to call myself his mom.
Yeah.
And I know he inspired so many people that never even met him. So I love that.
1,000%. It was not for naught. So what did the trial have to say? What was the percentage of that outcome?
So Raxton was the first to pass away from it. We found out after he passed away that there were 2 boys that actually we found out. So he was dosed in January, and in March it was really bad. Like he was not doing very well in the ICU, and for some weird reason, this clinical trial was a little shady because the sites weren't able to communicate with each other. Okay. So the NIH didn't know that there was a kid dosed in Chicago or somewhere else, UCLA. They didn't know that there was a kid dosed at UCLA in, I think, November, who was already in liver failure and not doing good at all.
Okay.
Because if they would have known that, they would have told us, and they would have given us a choice. Do you still want to do this or not?
Right.
But they had no idea.
Yeah.
So Rax passed away, and then a month later, a kid in Germany passed away. And then 2 months later, the kid from UCLA passed away. And they stopped the clinical trial once Rax passed away.
Sure.
But then they, on Christmas Eve, that next Christmas Eve, they made an announcement, we're going to do this again. That was a horrible Christmas Eve.
Oh, no.
Like, that was really hard.
So did something change between what they gave the other boys and what they gave Raxton?
That's
and then
what I'm
they
still
were
wondering.
Doing? Okay.
That's what
What about your friend?
Her son was never dosed.
Okay. Because of your experience?
No. I knew that they didn't intend on dosing him, and I asked her, like, please just pull him out of this clinical trial because they're making you travel from Texas to UCLA, and that's not fair for you or your son, because they had told us that Raxton was going to be dosed, and they hadn't told her. And I just said, I just feel like they're trying to get, because her son was not as severe, but he had the mutation that he was.
Okay.
So it's kind of a weird situation, but he was never treated.
Yeah.
He's still alive.
Okay.
And he's still doing as great as he can. He's amazing.
An anomaly.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they wanted to know why.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I don't know. It's just it's a very hard thing. They did continue dosing. They decided they would do a lower dose though the next time.
Okay.
And they dosed I believe he was 2, and he passed away very shortly after.
After Christmas. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. Something had to have changed with the drug.
Yeah.
Between.
It feels like it for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know what. They've never given us an explanation. They've never called to say, "Hey, I'm sorry." Like they have said we're sorry for these families, but they haven't like reached out personally because our kids were just a number to them. They weren't Raxton and so and so and so and so and so. They were just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They were just numbers to them.
That's really disheartening.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Now life after Raxton. Then what? Now you're grieving.
Yeah. We grieved and we decided, you know what? Life is really short. My husband was like, we're just going to travel. And I didn't know he had this in mind. I didn't know that he like planned it like that, but we just went and went and went and went and went. And it was so nice to like get away. And, you know, I mean, coming home to the home that we lived in with Raxton was like so peaceful, but so hard at the same time.
Yeah.
For me, I would walk into his room and just talk to him, and I would talk to him in the kitchen whenever I was home by myself.
Yeah.
But I just, I really enjoyed being able to get away and enjoy time with my husband, because when Raxton was alive, most of the time he didn't have a night nurse.
Yeah.
So that meant I slept in a rollaway bed in his room because he could not be left alone. You just had to be right there in case an emergency happened, which could happen at any second. So it was nice to like sleep in a bed with my husband and not sleep on a little bitty twin-size bed by myself.
Yeah, I
and
completely understand.
And get up and go. And I got to see all the weirdness with the pandemic, all the, the plastic over everything, and everywhere you went, it was so different because I didn't get to get out when Rax was here. Even in Maryland, I stayed on that NIH campus from December until he passed away.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't go for groceries. I didn't get to go do anything. It was just like, I need somebody to bring stuff to me because I can't go.
Yeah.
So anyway, we traveled, and we started talking about wanting to have another child because, we're like in our 30s and we kind of need to get this done. But I had some health issues the next year, and so that kind of put a halt on everything. We were going to do IVF and do an egg retrieval, and none of that was safe for me. And then my cousin was actually going to be a surrogate for us, and we were going to go that route. And we kind of just were holding off on, like, let's figure out if we're going to move out of Odessa, how are we going to do this? And then July of 2022, I got a call from a close family member saying that there was somebody that wanted to give a baby up for adoption.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. And they said, I mentioned your name. And I said, okay. And I said, well, I want the baby.
It's a yes.
Of course, it's a shift day, so I can't talk to him.
Oh, no. I'm saying yes for both of us. He'll catch up later.
That's what I said. I was like, I don't even have to talk to him. I'm just going to go ahead and say yes, and then I'll call and let him know what's going on.
I love it.
So so then we talked to the bio mom, and she asked if I wanted to be in the room when the baby was born. That day, I'd never met her, don't know her.
What miracle is that? Like, you can't get around that. That's like God.
Yeah.
All over that.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that was July, and the baby was due in October. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we didn't have very much time. We had just put our house on the market at the beginning of the month. We had just gone under contract. And my husband was like, "Do we need to just stay here?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. We need to get out of here while we can." Yeah. So we moved to our ranch, and it's been so crazy, but it's been so beautiful, and it's so funny because we'll just be sitting on the couch at night watching TV after we put our baby to bed, and she'll make a little cry or make a noise or something, and my husband just looks at me and he says, "I love her."
Oh, yay.
We just adore her. We love her so much, and we're so
awesome.
thankful.
How old is she?
She will be a year on the 17th.
I'm so proud for you. And I've been following all of your stuff, of course. So I've been watching her grow up and you guys doing all the things. It just makes my heart sore that that you got to be Raxton's mom.
Yeah.
That you got to serve him and love him in all of the ways that you did.
Yeah.
That I don't doubt for a minute that all of the research and the things that he did go through isn't going to further, hopefully, what eventually does become a cure.
Yeah, I really believe so. And I know that there are still so many boys that are still out there walking around and eating orally and breathing on their own and doing all of the amazing things that they're doing. I mean, of course, I would have loved for that to have been what happened with Raxton, but we didn't expect him to even live as long as he did, and I'm thankful he's not suffering anymore.
Yeah, amen.
I would have never wanted him to suffer a day of his life, and I'm so glad that, he just everything happened, I think, so beautifully. I'm glad that we were able to be right by his side. The last heartbeat he had, we never had to pull the plug, as people say. Yeah. We didn't have to make that decision. It was him. His body just couldn't go anymore, and we got to love him and kiss him and hold his hands and all of that until he couldn't anymore. And I'm so thankful that it was no other way.
Yeah. It is so incredible. You're incredible. Like, did life somehow prepare you for this, or you just...
I don't know. Maybe it did. I mean, I went through a little bit of craziness as a kid, and maybe
built up all of your resilience.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've always been extremely emotional, and I've always thought, like, I hate that, like, I cry so easily all the time, and like my mom always said, "I always thought you were my weakest child."
Oh, no. Thanks, Mom.
But you're really my strongest, you know?
You are, yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, I'm glad that came around, like, I'm glad that I wasn't the weakling of the whole entire family.
No, I think I'm big emotions too. Yeah. I feel all the things and I feel them big.
Yeah.
And that's helped me and it's hurt me, but it changes the way that I love people.
Yeah.
And it ends up being such a gift on the other side, because life is not nice.
No.
Life is not good to anybody, honestly.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so excited that I'm getting to share your story with everybody, because you are inspiring, your son is inspiring, your daughter's going to be just based on how you are, who you are, like, you're going to grow her into something that is really, really going to have such a purpose and a presence on
Thank
this
you.
earth. I just know.
Thank you.
Is there anything that we can do, like in Raxton's name or for your family, for your daughter?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. I've kind of unfollowed all of the people that are doing the research and all that.
Sure.
I don't know
Okay.
anything for Raxton, but I think we're good. We
So
are
good.
so thankful to live out in the middle of nowhere on our ranch and be away from all the craziness.
Amen. I'm super jealous. I love that.
Yeah.
I thank you so much. You did
Thank
such a
you.
great job. And if you think of anything that we can do for you, we would just love to continue to be in support of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for
All
having
right.
me.